What if the problem isn't your life, but the voice in your head narrating it like everything is wrong? Because that's how negative thoughts work. They show up disguised as realism, settle in like they pay rent, and before you even notice, you hand them the controls. One comment, one look, one small mistake, and suddenly your mind turns into a courtroom, and you're the one on trial. And the most ridiculous part is that you believe every line as if it were a final verdict. It's not that you're weak, it's that you've spent years letting every thought talk to you however it wants. Stay with me. Gabriel here. Welcome to the Stoic Garden. Today we're going to work on 7 mental points, 7 practical moves to regain control, cut the rumination, and turn down the volume on that negativity that drains your energy. By the end, you'll have a clear way to tell what's real from what's just noise, and the last point will give you such a solid foundation that your mind will stop collapsing every time the day gets heavy. Now, let's begin. 1. Learn to separate facts from thoughts before believing your mind. It sounds simple, but this is where most people fail, because they live mixing everything together into one mental soup. Something small happens, and your head turns it into a full movie, with villains, betrayals, tragic endings, and background music. And you sit there watching it like it's a documentary. It isn't, it's your mind improvising. A fact is something bare, cold, almost boring. A message didn't arrive. Someone spoke in a dry tone. You made a mistake, that's it. The thought is the makeup you put on top of it to make it hurt more. They're not answering because they don't care about me. They talk to me like that because they look down on me. I messed up because I'm a disaster. And of course, once you've narrated it with that much conviction, now you believe it and react as if it were true. The negative mind is good at one thing, making what's imagined feel urgent. It sets off an internal alarm, tightens your chest, and suddenly you turn into a disaster detective, looking for proof to confirm the story you already wrote. And here comes the question almost nobody asks at the exact moment they need it most. Is what I'm feeling coming from a fact, or from an interpretation I'm using to suffer? Because yes, sometimes suffering works in your favor. It sounds awful, but it's real. Suffering gives you an identity, an excuse, a role to play. If everything is the fault of what others must be thinking, then you don't have to decide anything. You just react and complain. And that's how you spend your day, waiting for reality to adapt to your fear, as if the world were obligated to speak to you gently. What you do here is train a pause. It's not some mystical ritual, it's a break. When you feel the emotional hit, don't rush to respond, don't rush to explain, don't rush to check your phone like someone owes you an answer so you can breathe. Ask yourself calmly what actually happened, what is verifiable, and which part is your mind filling in the blanks with poison. And if you can't prove it, don't use it as the foundation for tearing yourself apart. Here's the trick. When you separate fact from thought, you get your authority back. You stop being a puppet with emotional strings, because the thought can change, adjust, be corrected. The fact doesn't need drama, just clarity. And with clarity, you stop swallowing every idea as if it were an order. You start treating your mind for what it often is, a useful tool, yes, but also a scared child with a megaphone. And no, this doesn't make you cold. It makes you fair to yourself. You save yourself imaginary arguments, impulsive reactions, long messages that embarrass you later, entire nights ruminating over a scene that only exists in your head. And on top of that, something even more important happens. You become hard to manipulate because you stop reacting to suggestions and start reacting to facts. When you master this, you start noticing something uncomfortable. Most of your bad days don't come from life. They come from your inner narrator. From that narrator who exaggerates, generalizes, guesses people's intentions, invents futures, and charges you for them as if they had already happened. And that's where the next problem opens up. Because even if you know how to separate facts from thoughts, your mind can still get trapped in the same subject for hours, repeating it, turning it over, chewing on it until it leaves you exhausted. And that isn't reflection, it's something else. It's the mental loop, the rumination that steals your peace and energy. 2. Stop ruminating and break the mental loop that steals your peace and energy. Rumination is that habit of going back to the same thought over and over again, as if simply repeating it could make it truer or solve it. You get stuck on a phrase, a scene, a possibility, and your mind acts like it's working hard, when in reality it's just spinning its wheels. And the worst part is that it feels productive. I'm processing it. No, you're draining yourself. You're hammering at the same nail until you break the wall. Rumination doesn't give you new answers, it gives you exhaustion. It steals your sleep, your presence, your patience with the people who are actually in front of you, because you're still arguing in your head with someone who doesn't even know that argument exists. The Stoics were brutally clear about this. Epictetus, who went from slave to teacher, said it plainly, "It is not events that disturb people, but the judgments they form about them. It isn't poetry, it's a diagnosis. What breaks you isn't what happened, it's the movie you built around it. And now keep replaying as if someone were paying you to screen it." And here comes the moment when you have to look at yourself honestly. Are you really thinking to understand? Or are you thinking to punish yourself? Are you looking for a way out? Or are you trying to feel worse so you can justify your paralysis? Because there's a part of you that believes that if you suffer enough, then you're doing something. As if pain were some kind of currency that guarantees control. It doesn't work like that. Breaking the loop starts with one simple and difficult decision. Stop negotiating with the thought. Don't debate it, don't polish it, don't improve it, don't turn it into the topic of the day. Name it and let it go. Tell yourself, "Here we go again," and return to the present. And yes, it sounds too simple. That's exactly why your mind doesn't like it, because your mind loves making everything complicated so it can feel important. There's a second hit of reality. Rumination lives in stillness without direction. When your body is motionless and your attention is loose, your mind gets creative in the worst possible way. That's why the break isn't always mental, sometimes it's physical. You get up, you walk, you wash your face, you breathe slowly, you do something concrete with your hands. Not because that's magic, but because you're sending your system a signal. We are not in danger mode, we are in action mode. And when the thought insists because it will, you don't insult yourself for having it. You don't start fighting yourself as if you were your own enemy. What you do is limit its access. You don't give it your whole day. If you need to process something, do it in a defined space by writing it down, organizing it, grounding it in facts and real options. Rumination hates paper because on paper it shows how absurd it is. In your head, on the other hand, it looks profound. There's also one detail almost nobody wants to accept. Part of rumination is emotional addiction. You get used to living with tension. Your chest, always tight, feels normal. Being calm starts to feel strange. Your body gets used to that dose of mental and emotional stress. And when calm appears, your mind says, "Something's missing," and goes looking for a problem to fill the empty space. It's ridiculous, but it's human. What matters is seeing it in time and not obeying it. Breaking the loop means getting your energy back for what actually matters. Not for winning imaginary arguments, not for predicting tragedies, not for reliving one mistake 1,000 times. For living. And once you stop that wheel, the next level appears. Interpretation. Because even if you break the loop, if you keep interpreting everything against yourself, you're going to fall right back in, and that's where we're going now. 3. Change your interpretation and reduce the suffering you feed yourself. Because now you've seen that facts are one thing and the story is another, but here comes the part that is hardest to swallow. A lot of the time, what hurts you is not what happened, but what it means to you. And your mind is an expert at giving it the worst possible meaning, with a creativity it should be using to solve real problems. Something uncomfortable happens, and your mind doesn't stay at, "That was uncomfortable." No, it goes straight to, "This proves I'm not enough. This confirms that the same thing always happens to me. This means everything is going to fall apart." And that's when you start suffering in advance, feeling ashamed over scenes nobody even remembers, feeling afraid of futures that do not exist yet. And of course, because you feel it in your body, you take it as truth. That's the cheap trick. Interpretation is the filter. The filter can be reasonable or it can be poison, and most people are using a broken filter that turns everything into a personal threat. Silence becomes rejection. "We'll talk later" becomes abandonment. A mistake becomes identity. And you do not even stop to ask whether there is another possible reading, because your mind already sold you the first one as if it were the only one. In the middle of all that, there is a moment when you can take back control. Not at the beginning, when you are calm and feeling wise, but right when you are activated and your mind is on fire. That is when you ask yourself something simple but uncomfortable. What real evidence do I have for this conclusion, or am I just filling in the gaps with fear? Because let's be honest, your mind loves playing fortune teller, and on top of that, it believes it is never wrong. Changing your interpretation is not pretending everything is wonderful. It is choosing a reading that does not destroy you. They spoke to me coldly can become they're stressed. They didn't reply can become they're busy. I made a mistake can become I learned something I needed to learn. Not because that is definitely the truth, but because your tragic version is not certain either. It is just the one that leaves you worse off. And here comes something almost nobody practices. An interpretation does not have to feel good to be useful. It has to be functional. If your reading makes you clearer, calmer, and more able to act, it serves you. If your reading leaves you collapsed, anxious, reactive, and looking for validation, it is sabotaging you. It is that simple. Your mind is not an altar where everything that appears is sacred. It is a workshop. And you decide which tools you use. Some people get offended as a hobby. They wake up already looking for a reason to feel attacked, and then they say the world is harsh. No, they just live interpreting everything as a personal insult. And that habit is a factory for negative thoughts. Do you realize how much peace you lose just by insisting that everything is being done to you? When you change your interpretation, you do not just reduce suffering. You recover your dignity. You become harder to manipulate. You stop handing over your mental state to the first gesture someone makes, and you start living with an idea that is pure gold in this inner war. Most things are not personal. They are human, clumsy, imperfect, just like you are too. And when you get this, something becomes obvious. It is not enough to interpret better, because even with good interpretations, if your attention is always pointed at the worst, you will end up finding it. The mind finds what it looks for. And now we are going to talk about what decides what you look for, your attention. 4. Control your attention and avoid what triggers anxiety and negativity. Your attention is like a flashlight. If you point it at garbage, you are going to see garbage, and then you are going to say the world smells bad. That is how it works. It is not that life has no problems. It is that you are training your mind to stay focused on what unsettles it, what makes it compare, what irritates it, what scares it. People think negative thoughts appear out of nowhere like some mysterious virus, but a lot of the time you feed them with a daily diet of triggers. News every minute, social media putting other people's perfect lives in your face, conversations where everyone complains as if that were a personality trait. And there you are, consuming all of it as if it had no cost. Then you ask why you feel anxious. Well, because you are pouring in gasoline and expecting water. Marcus Aurelius, who was an emperor and still had to sit down and wrestle with his own mind, wrote it with brutal clarity. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Therefore guard accordingly, and take care that you entertain no notions unsuitable to virtue and reasonable nature. It is not pretty advice, it is a warning. If you do not guard the gate, anything gets in. And what gets in stays, and what stays rules you. Here comes the part where you have to grow up. Not everything deserves your attention. Not every opinion deserves space. Not every provocation deserves a response. And yes, I know, your mind tells you that if you do not check, if you do not understand, if you do not control it, something bad will happen. How convenient, because that is how it keeps you hooked, anxious, available, on alert. And you applaud it, thinking that is what it means to be prepared. Start noticing what triggers you. Not so you can live in fear, but so you can be strategic. If you know a certain kind of content leaves you tense, do not consume it before bed. If you know a certain person sends you spiraling, limit the contact or deal with them with clear boundaries. If you know your mind lights up when you have no direction, give yourself direction. Because attention without direction goes straight to drama. And in the middle of the day, when you notice your mind looking for negativity like a dog looking for a fight, ask yourself one quick question, right there in the heat of it. Does this make me clearer, or does it just make me more reactive? Because some things inform you, and some things just poison you. And you know the difference. Your body tells you. You feel it in your chest, your jaw, your mood. Controlling your attention is also learning how to come back. Back to your body, back to your breathing, back to the task, back to what is in front of you. Not as punishment, as training. At first it is hard because your mind is used to jumping around, but every time you come back you are building inner authority. You are telling yourself, I decide where I live, not my anxiety. And pay attention here, because this calls for a little sarcasm. A lot of people say they want peace, but they live chasing whatever steals it from them. They go looking at things they already know will upset them. They keep talking to people who throw them off balance. They compare themselves to strangers, and then they want calm, as if it were a button. That is not how it works. Peace has to be protected. Attention has to be protected. If you do not do it, nobody will do it for you. When you start controlling your attention, negativity loses fuel. It does not disappear by magic, but it weakens. And then you are ready for the next step, which is no longer just about cutting thoughts or redirecting attention. It is about changing mental habits, replacing what is harmful with daily discipline, with a simple routine that holds you up even when you do not feel like it. 5. Replace harmful mental habits with daily discipline and a simple routine. Because the mind does not become negative by accident, it becomes negative by habit. And habits are not argued with, they are trained. Your problem is not that you have dark thoughts from time to time. Your problem is that you feed them with invisible routines, with small daily behaviors you barely notice and that together leave you living in complaint mode. There are mental habits that seem harmless, but they are slow poison. Repeating the same things to yourself as if they were your identity. Talking to yourself with contempt to motivate yourself. Checking your phone every time you feel an empty moment, as if silence were dangerous. Going back to the same conversation in your head because you want to win an argument that never even happened. And then you are surprised that you feel exhausted, as if your mind were a machine that can run 24 hours a day with no maintenance. Mental discipline begins when you stop treating your thoughts like important guests. Some are just noise, some are impulses, some are fear dressed up as logic. And if you do not set a filter, everything gets in. You do not need to be a monk, you need to be the owner of your house. Because right now your mind is like a waiting room where anyone can sit down, shout, leave trash behind, and you still offer them coffee. When you feel yourself sliding down the same old slope, do something simple. Stop and bring it down to earth. Write it down, say it quietly out loud, turn it into a clear sentence. Not so it sounds pretty, but so it sounds real. Negativity feeds on chaos. On, I don't know what's wrong with me, on everything is bad, on I'll never be able to do this. When you make it concrete, it loses power because it can no longer hide behind the fog. And here is a question that can save you if you use it in time, not when you are already at the edge. What are you practicing in your head every day? Calm or war? Because yes, it is practice. You practice anxiety when you check, when you anticipate, when you control, when you compare yourself. You practice calm when you come back to your body, when you return to the task, when you accept that not everything gets solved today. Nobody wakes up with a stable mind by luck. They wake up with a stable mind because they built one. A simple routine is not a perfect schedule. It is a couple of anchors. A moment to clear your head before the world fills it with noise. A moment to close the day without going to bed with your mind still blazing like a factory. A physical gesture that reminds your system that you are alive and present, not trapped in stories. And if one day you slip, you do not dramatize it. You return. Discipline is not heroism. It is consistency. It also has to be said. Sometimes you sabotage yourself because you like the intensity. You feel like somebody when you are stirred up, when you are thinking a lot, when you are feeling a lot. Calm bores you. And of course, your mind goes looking for drama so it can feel useful. It is not profound, it is a habit. And habits are re-educated through repetition, not through late-night speeches you give yourself in your head. Start replacing the harmful with the basic. Less exposure to what sets you off. More real pauses. More small decisions that give you back your self-respect. Because the mind calms down when it feels guided. And when you guide yourself, negative thoughts lose the privilege of being in charge. But there is a point where discipline is not enough if you keep fighting what is not up to you. You can train habits all day long and still suffer if you cling to controlling the uncontrollable. And that is where we enter the territory where Stoicism stops being a nice idea and becomes a backbone. 6. Accept what you cannot control and act firmly on what you can. This is the cruelest and most liberating filter. cruel because it takes away your excuses, liberating because it gives your energy back. Most of your negative thoughts are born from a silent obsession with controlling things that will never obey you. Someone else's reaction, the exact outcome, the past, other people's opinions, time. Life does not negotiate with you, it just keeps moving. Accepting is not giving up, it is stopping yourself from wasting strength in the wrong place. It is like pushing on a wall and then getting angry because it will not move. You can spend years pushing. The wall does not change. The one who ends up with a broken shoulder is you. Acceptance is stopping the push and using those same hands to build a door somewhere else. The most ironic part is that you think resisting makes you strong. You think anticipating everything makes you smart. You think carrying everything makes you responsible. And in the end, you are just exhausted, anxious, and controlled by what is outside of you. That is modern slavery, not visible chains, but emotional dependence on what you do not control. Cleanthes, one of the ancient Stoics who took over after Zeno, said it in a line that should hit you in the face every time you get stubborn. Follow willingly the course of nature, and you will not feel dragged like a slave by what you should have accepted. He is not talking about sad resignation. He is talking about intelligence, about cooperating with the inevitable so you do not turn every day into a fight you are never going to win. And here comes the other side of the coin. Accepting what you cannot control does not make you passive, it makes you precise. Because the moment you let go of what does not depend on you, it becomes crystal clear what does. Your behavior, your judgment, your effort, your boundaries, the way you speak, the way you leave, the way you come back. That is yours, and it is more than enough to live with dignity. And do you know what happens when you actually do this? You stop asking the world for permission to be at peace. You stop needing everything to go perfectly in order to be okay. You stop turning every mistake into a moral tragedy, not because you no longer care, but because you finally understand what is your responsibility and what is noise. Acting firmly on what you do control also means something that makes many people uncomfortable. There are days when you are going to feel fear, insecurity, or sadness, and you are still going to do the right thing. You are going to respond calmly. You are going to move forward with discipline. You are going to make a decision even without 100% certainty, because absolute certainty is a luxury your mind uses as an excuse not to move. When you train this filter, negative thinking loses ground. It can no longer blackmail you with scenarios. It can no longer demand that you control your entire life before allowing you to breathe. And right there, when you are no longer fighting the universe, the final step opens up. Keeping that stability is not only mental, it is physical too. Your rest, your movement, your daily self-care. Because a stable mind needs a body that supports it, not a neglected body that betrays it when you need it most. 7. Build a stable mind with rest, movement, and consistent self-care. This is the point many people ignore because it does not sound mental, and yet it shapes your mind more than any beautiful quote ever could. If your body is worn down, your mind is not going to philosophize, it is going to survive. And when the mind is in survival mode, the first things it produces are negativity, suspicion, irritation, and catastrophe. There is a simple truth that can save you years of useless struggle. A tired mind invents problems to justify its exhaustion. Not because you are dramatic, but because your system is overloaded. You slept badly, ate whatever was available, did not move, spent the whole day sitting with tension in your jaw. And then you are surprised when your head starts holding imaginary funerals at night. Yes, of course. Very strange, right? Rest is not shutting off your brain with a screen until you fall asleep. That is not rest, that is anesthesia. Rest means giving your body a real closing to the day. Lower the lights, lower the stimulation, stop consuming other people's stories so you do not go to bed with a borrowed mind. Because if you fall asleep in noise, you wake up in noise. And then you expect peace as if it were an automatic right. Movement is the other hidden button. You do not need to become an athlete. You need to remind your body that you are not trapped. Walk, stretch, sweat a little, breathe with your chest open. The body is a constant message to the mind. When you move, your brain understands that there is a way forward. When you stay rigid, it understands that there is danger. And then anxiety shows up, that brilliant advisor who always recommends the worst option. And in the middle of the day, When you notice negativity biting at your heels, do not go straight into arguing with your mind. First, check the basics. Did you sleep well? Have you eaten something decent? Have you moved, or have you been stiff for hours? Have you actually taken in fresh air, or are you just breathing fast like a bill is chasing you? Sometimes what you call an emotional crisis is just your body asking for maintenance. Consistent self-care is not pampering yourself, it is supporting yourself. It is doing the obvious before you fall into drama. It is telling yourself, I'm not abandoning myself today. Because self-neglect is negative thinking's favorite fuel. When you neglect yourself, your mind feels left alone in charge, and a mind left alone in charge becomes a tyrant. Do you want stability? Stop looking for it only in your head. Build solid ground. Sleep as if your dignity depended on it, because it does. Move as if your mood depended on it, because it does. And take care of yourself like someone who respects themselves, not like someone who just keeps enduring until they break. When you do this, you notice it. The thoughts still come, but they no longer drag you away. Negativity still knocks on the door, but you no longer open it out of habit. And that is when you finally begin living with a mind that does not sabotage you every day, but walks beside you. If you made it this far, you already understand the essential part. Your mind is not your enemy, but it is not your boss either. Negative thoughts are not prophecies. They are internal events that gain power when you confuse them with facts, when you repeat them endlessly, when you interpret everything as a threat, and when you leave your attention wandering around as if it had no owner. Real control is not rigidity. It is judgment. It is presence. It is choosing what gets in and what gets to stay. Now bring it into your life without overcomplicating it. The next time that dark thought shows up, do not turn it into your identity or your destiny. Pause, separate what is real from what is imagined, cut the loop, and return to what you can actually do today. Protect your attention the way you protect your money, and support your mind with a body that is taken care of, because you cannot ask for calm from an exhausted system. That is where the show of automatic suffering ends and firmness begins. If this helps you, subscribe and stay close, because here we train character, not dependence. And leave a comment with the phrase, I am Stoic, so I know you are doing the work, and if you feel like it, write what country you are listening from. This channel is not a monologue. It is a community of people who got tired of being held hostage by their own minds. Gabriel here. Welcome to the Stoic Garden. On screen, you will see 2 recommended videos to keep going deeper and strengthening this inner control. Pick one, keep the process going, and remember this when your mind wants to return to chaos. You decide who is in charge inside you.